3, 2. All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. Our guest speaker is calling from my hometown, Los Angeles, so I'm already feeling the synergy there. I know she's going to drop a lot of knowledge in this next hour. So in order for us to have the best time here, I like to start off these sessions by reminding us that seems like a lot of crazy things, actually not, it doesn't seem like, there are a lot of crazy things happening in the world. You could be doing anything with your time right now, but you're deciding to spend the hour with us. So let's be present, let's respect each other, and let's really maximize this hour by participating. So if you're rewatching this, you know, you're hitting play and you're being involved in that way. But if you're here live with us, we want to hear from you. So you can participate in a number of ways. You can turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. We believe in visibility here at Power to Fly. This is a safe digital space here. I will be kicking folks out who don't respect us and our voices. So again, this is a safe space. Feel free to turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. And I'm going to sound like a broken record throughout the conversation because I want you all to hop off mute whenever you want to share your voice or write in the chat box. If you do hop off mute, you will be featured in our live recording as this is being recorded. And this is also another invitation to stop multitasking if you can, sit on your hands if you need to, and just be present and listen to us so that you can hop off mute or write in the chat box whenever something comes to mind and you can be intentional in the moment there. If anyone has any sensitive information and you prefer to be kept anonymous, you can write to me privately in the chat box. You can find me under Mariella Marie. Write to me privately and I will flag your question or your reflection to our guest speaker and I'll keep you anonymous. Everyone who has signed up for this chat, you will be getting a rewatch email with a link to this video. That will also include a lot of the resources that our guest speaker mentions. So just be looking out for that email so that you can go click around and then you can open up as many tabs as you want and multitask all you want to continue the knowledge here. And the last thing I'll say is we'd love for you to follow us on socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store for you. And if this is your first time joining a Chat and Learn where I've moderated, I'm just going to take a couple seconds to introduce myself. So again, Mariella Marie, originally from Los Angeles, currently living in Patagonia, Argentina. I love speaking about the importance of emotional intelligence in the workplace, at home, and at play. So I might bring some of our reflections there as we go through these awesome questions that you all have submitted offline. And if you're interested in supporting my project, you can find me at thepositiveforceteam.org. You can subscribe to you can subscribe or sign up, same thing, I guess, to our newsletter and keep up with things that we're developing there. Or I'm just happy to connect with you all on LinkedIn. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker. Priya, let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to learn about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So impressed with where you live. I can't wait to learn more about your work. So yeah, my name is Priya Sodha. I am a certified coach and mindfulness instructor, and I love the topic about setting boundaries and creating life-work balance. I actually have come from a long history of working in the workforce development kind of industry, specifically focused with diverse populations all over California. Most recently, I was a director of career services at a local college, and now I am the founder of my own company called Inner Gem. The intention is that everything that we do, everything that I do really speaks towards you being able to speak out for yourself and advocate for yourself, because you have all these gems and nuggets inside of you that many of us have this potential we're sitting on and just need a little bit of guidance to realize you have it. So that's the intention behind Inner Gem. I love Power to Fly. I've always followed it. I love the mission. I love the work that you do. I just spoke a couple weeks ago on the topic of self-promotion, and I'll be speaking again at the Diversity Reboot Summit, I believe. So you'll be seeing more of me. A little bit fun fact about me and why boundaries is so important is I've probably held 13 jobs at one time in the past year. In holding all those jobs at once, I still manage to only work from 9 to 5, have my entire weekends free, and potentially shut off by 2 o'clock on a Friday. And so I have found a very, very, very clean way of being able to set boundaries for myself in what I do internally and what I say externally. On top of that, one of my many jobs is that I teach Zumba, I teach yoga. I have my puppy. I just got married this year. So much happened to me this year. And this was the first, I will say this was the strongest year where I felt mentally healthy and mentally prepared to take on my day every single day. And so I'm excited to share kind of how I've done it. I know there's a bunch of questions that's going to pop up from this group, and share more about how we can be intentional about setting boundaries. The first thing I'm going to kick off with, though, everyone for being here, give yourself a round of applause, because just by logging on to a Zoom call right now is such a challenge when you have competing meetings and priorities. It's so easy, because I've done it, to see something on your calendar and say, I have something else to do. I'm just not going to do this. But by showing up here, you knew you had to put yourself first. So thank you for doing that. That's huge.
Yes. Digital confetti already. We're starting off on a high note.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to use that.
All right. So Priya, I would love for you to cover the principal themes for today's conversation, and then we'll roll into the live Q&A.
Yeah. So I'm really going to talk about identifying the importance of setting boundaries, establishing life work priorities. A hint here, what we may not realize, a lot of it is a mindset shift. And then understanding the various ways to set boundaries. So how can you begin and start that process? A lot of it starting with yourself first, and then learn how to put it into practice. That being said, comes into communication and self-advocacy and practicing the art of saying no, which is not a scary thing to do and is actually welcome and respected wherever you're at. So do you want me to kind of jump in and talk a little bit more about these topics, or do you want to go into the questions?
Yeah, let's roll into the questions.
Okay,
and I would love
awesome.
if you can develop these topics as you are touching on the questions.
Yeah.
I just finished a chat where I love this. I'm going to print it off on a t-shirt. Dr. Van Bailey said that no is a complete sentence.
It is. It 100% is.
Yes. Okay, so just want to shout out where everyone's calling from so we can kind of understand where we're in this digital space. I know that things have been transitioning a lot. Digital fatigue is real, video fatigue is real. So I just want to echo Priya's applause that we are taking time to develop ourselves and to be more mindful. So thank you all. We've got folks calling from Charleston, South Carolina, Portland, Oregon, Pennsylvania, California, Detroit, Long Island, New York, Kentucky, Buenos Aires, Argentina, Charleston, South Carolina. Awesome. So if you're just joining us, you can go ahead and write in the chat box. Let us know where you are in the world. And for now, I just want to kick us off with this question here. If you hear your question come up and you're live with us, let us know that this was your question. We would just love to know that you're here. No pressure. If you prefer to stay behind the scenes, all good. I support you as well. And if you don't hear your question come up, if something comes to mind, even if it's a reflection or a dream you had last night or during your nap, we want to hear from you. So write that in the chat box or hop off mute when I invite you all to hop off mute. So, I see we got more folks, Phoenix, Arizona, Nashville, Tennessee, Mexico. Awesome. Continue to drop those locations there in the chat box. All right, Priya, let's start with this first question here. In my experience, balance can be easier or harder to achieve depending on what you're juggling. Can you please walk us through your typical workday and how you achieve a balance with your challenges?
Ooh, I love this question. Okay. So, I did start off by saying I've at one point had 13 jobs. I'm not lying about that. What I'm notoriously known for is how many jobs I have, and I still manage them all. So my workday, I've done a lot of work on this, and particularly in the pandemic, I had to do a lot more kind of reshifting because I don't know if anyone here has a pet, but his needs were crazy. My husband still goes into the office. I'm at home. And I don't know about any of you, if you are at home, that feeling of having to take care of everything now, not just on work, landed on me. And so what I had to do is really figure out how I wanted to shift my boundaries. So I've started really thinking with the mindset that my weeks begin on Saturday. So when I say that, that puts life before work. So I now communicate things as life work balance. And so when I do that, I've reframed my thinking to say, okay, what in my life is a priority versus my work at the time. And so on Saturday mornings, I actually plan, like, what is my weekend going to look like? Starting from the get-go, I don't open my computer on a Saturday unless it has to do with my priorities, which I'll talk about. But Saturday, and to be intentional about that, I actually hide my laptop in my drawer and I don't even go into the room or the office because I choose not to do it. That's just what I've said to myself. And I'm open and honest to everyone who asks me to talk on Saturdays. Like I will not talk on Saturday, but this is the time frame I am available on Sundays. Sundays are not meant for any new meetings. They're not meant for any new planning calls. Sundays are meant for prepping for myself. So if I am working, it's about preparing work that I need for the week. So what that means is if I have a project coming or if I have a workshop going or I'm facilitating something, I'll look through to say, what tasks do I need to do for this facilitation? What emails might I need to send right now to prep me for that week? But I'm not actually doing anything new. I'm not doing any new planning because that Sunday evening is when, if you do something new that Sunday evening, what happens is you wake up feeling burnt out on Monday, and now it's Monday, and that's tough. So Sunday's a lot of prep. It's exciting prep. I call it, I actually make it really fun for myself. I have a really good planner here that I use. I get really excited to do it. And why it's exciting is because the first thing I plan on my calendar is me time. So every day in the week, I have a calendar invitation that says meeting with Priya. It sounded funny to some people, but the interesting thing about this is the one meeting you should never cancel is a meeting with yourself, because you are the most important person in your life. So every day there's about 30 minutes to an hour, 15 minutes if you can do whatever you have available. I plug that in right away. And then I look at my workout schedule for the week and then what I'm going to eat for the week. I do all that first. And then my workout schedule actually goes into my calendar. And in my previous job, it actually went into my work calendar and I did not make it private. I let people know at 6 p.m. at night, I'm going to yoga. And so if you need to schedule something, it's automatically going to reject it. And I'm not taking that call unless it goes above a priority. And we'll talk about that. So those things get scheduled first. And then what I'm cooking for the week gets scheduled third. And I'm planning that. That's life first for me. I realize it. Then I plan my dog's walks and I plan all the personal stuff. Then I go into work. The key thing about this is prioritizing the top 3 things I want to walk away out of on Friday that week. So the top 3 things are like, I want to have completed XYZ project. I want to have this phone call. Just 3 things I think about. What are the big, heavy things, even if it means it's a big block, which is like a big project you have to think about. And then I prioritize those. I ask myself, what is the most important that has to be completed? What part of this has to be completed first? Who do I need to talk to this week to complete this stuff? And then I start putting it on my calendar. This is the funny thing. I put all my to-do lists on my calendar. So when I wake up on Monday, I'm not looking at it to go, okay, what am I doing today? What time do I have to do XYZ? Or I'm just moving through emails and letting the work come to me. I know on my calendar that when I'm going to what work. So I'll get a notification on Monday at 1 that says, send this email. And all I do is go to that email, send the email, and I'm good. It's not anything heavy in my mind. What I also do on Sunday is I prep emails for the week. So I don't know if you want to share reactions. Anyone here prep emails for the week? Has anyone tried it?
I'm interested. I haven't tried it, but
I'll get my favorite. So like in Gmail, if you have Outlook, you can send emails ahead of time. Mike, do you have your hand up for that?
I'm just wondering, yeah, you do this on Sunday?
I do this on Sundays or in the evenings too, throughout the week if I need to. Because what happens if you wake up in the morning and you go, oh, I have to send that email. Think of it this way. You spend more time thinking of sending the email than sending the email. And now you spent an hour being burnt out when it just took 2 minutes to send that email. So I'll prep it Sunday or Monday night whenever I can. I go on Thursday, I know I need to follow up with this person. On Tuesday, I know I need to send this. On Friday, I know I need to send this. So Sunday night, I'm drafting all my emails and then I'm scheduling them to be sent sometime that week. So as the week rolls, those emails are going out without me having to think about it. That is now off my to-do list. I'll get a response and that's exciting. And sometimes you can go check to see if you need to go look at your scheduled email and change it. So that's my weekend. My Sundays are huge. Monday through Friday, I follow my calendar. Like, oh, look at this. You can schedule send in Slack. That's amazing. Yes. Do that. That's huge because Slack is annoying too. I follow my calendar. I would turn off Slack at 5 o'clock. I made it very clear to people around me that if you need anything from me after 5, you will get it in the morning at 9 a.m. That was very clear to me. My mornings, I have a morning routine where I spend 20 minutes just sitting. It could be 10 minutes for you, 5 minutes, doing something that makes you happy that day. It doesn't just have to be like a mindfulness routine. It can be something that you journal. It can be just drinking coffee in silence. It could be listening to your favorite song. Whatever it is, every morning I do that. I will not get to a computer because there's so many studies that show the moment you wake up and look at a phone, or the moment you go to sleep and look at a phone, you're naturally already kind of you're actually naturally hurting your brain. Like this is not healthy for you. This is not good for you. And you're actually not going to get the full sleep that you want or need. So that's how I really set my boundaries. And then in my calendar, I have do not book blocks on my calendar. This is really helpful for people that work in companies where you may feel like boundaries are not respected. But if you start actually putting in that as part of your agency and the way you communicate that, like I would love to talk, but from 1:30 to 2, I do have a competing meeting. You can say competing meeting because that competing meeting with yourself is the most important meeting you need to have. So why is that not a competing meeting? The only reason you change that, if it's not like a dire emergency, is because you've made the decision that you don't want to stick to your own boundaries. That is your decision that you are not putting yourself first. It's no one else's choice. Because the work that you have to do, you can plan around it. Remember that. So that's
Real talk.
and the
Real
work
talk.
you have to do if it's going over 40 hours a week is you have to tell yourself, I've said yes too many times this week. So I hope that's where my schedule goes in. When Fridays come by like 2:00, if I do any work, again, Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays, nothing new. Everything is closing up shop and following up and getting ready for next week. Like I'll tell you now, I'm already excited for next week. I have my whole calendar down for next week and I get excited about my weeks now. It was never the case.
Oh, you're dropping so much knowledge. And Mick, I just want to, I see you smiling and you hopped off mute. Are you already starting to do some of these things? Because you were questioning if she started on Saturday or Sunday.
No, I try to do everything during working hours. So the thought of sort of taking some time, I also have 2 young children, very young children. So the thought of doing stuff outside of regular working hours sounds horrible, but also the thought of having some time when I'm not also thinking about doing other crap, like all the stuff that just sort of comes up during the day. Slack is poison. Sounds pretty idyllic.
Yeah.
I wonder if one of the reasons I tried to avoid this stuff, though, especially after working hours, is because once I get my brain back into work mode, it's real hard to spin it back down.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's ways that you have for helping your brain move back into your life rather than staying in work brain.
That's a great question. First thing I want to address is the Sunday thing. It works at whatever day works for you. That's what I say. So choose a planning block for you. If it's because, everyone has something going on in their life, your kids are the most important thing. So keep them there with you on Sundays. Don't even have to look at a computer. But if you can schedule them an hour or 2 during the work week when you have that planning to do, plan for a little bit longer than planning for the day. That's what I suggest, so that you really have a better idea of how your week is going to look, because then you wake up every day feeling burnt out already and feeling like you have to do your plan for the day. That's when you start thinking about, I didn't complete this yesterday, and now you're focused on yesterday's work, and by 5:00 you haven't started today's work. And so that's where that kind of burnout comes in. The shutting off thing and like the in and out, I actually go through that because I do a lot of these facilitations. So sometimes I'll go downstairs, talk to my husband as if I'm facilitating in a workshop. And he's like, why are you talking to me in that voice? That's not how, And so I have to reprogram like my puppy voice, my facilitation voice, my like conversational voice, all that. But then my mind is always thinking on like, I have to develop this content for tomorrow. What's going on? So what I do before I go downstairs or before I leave my computer, I shut everything off and I do this like 5-minute mindfulness thing called, it's called RAIN. You do it when it comes to building resiliency, but you can also do it like to transition your feelings or emotions to something else. And so what that means is you could sit down, you could close your eyes, shut everything off, whatever you need, or put some music on, but you kind of just recognize where you're at right now. If you're feeling like you're just thinking about work, allow yourself to feel that. Allow yourself to be like, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling like I need to work another 3 hours tonight, whatever it is that you're feeling. Just sit there, close your eyes and let it go through your body. But then ask yourself, okay, I'm going to investigate, like, why am I feeling this when I know I need to go have dinner? I know I need to go play, like I have my kids, I have all this other stuff to do at night. Just say, like, why am I feeling this? We'll then say, okay, maybe it's because I haven't planned ahead for this, or maybe it's because this is still heavy on my mind. So is there something I can get off my mind right now before I leave the computer? Or is there something that I can do in the morning? And that's where N comes in, which is called nurture or next steps. So like, what do I want to feel in this moment? And what I want to feel is like, I don't want to feel like work right now. So to get to that, my next step is I have to take everything out of my brain and put it on a piece of paper and dump it out there, and then calendar in for the next day, look at that piece of paper. Literally what it'll say in my calendar is look at that piece of paper from yesterday. Take it all out of your brain, dump it out, write it out. I have a journal. I call it a stress journal. Anytime something stressful comes up, I go to that journal and just throw it on there. Because if it's not in my head, I'm worried that it's not written somewhere. I'm going to forget it. So have that journal ready to write that stuff down. It can be chicken scratch. And then now that you've said, now I want to feel like, now I want to be with my family. I want to shut this off. This is all written down. I'm good to go. When I come here tomorrow, I trust myself tomorrow that I've already got what I need. I hope that helps.
It does. It really reminds me of a principle that Cal Newport uses called the work shutdown ritual, which is very similar to what you're talking about. I'll share a link in Slack.
Yeah, please do.
But yeah.
Tatiana, I saw something in the chat I want to call out. I think was really cool is that your new rule, your rule is no new projects with 45 minutes left in the day. It never fails to impact my evening, even if it's just in thought. That's amazing. No new projects at a certain time. That's a great idea.
You know, you've shared so much already. I think if I can just highlight, I love, because the importance of language for me is key in how we just reshape how we want to participate in life, right? And so I often like to research and speak about, in the workshops that I moderate for and facilitate, how we can decolonize the mind. And this has this mindset shift that comes with it. So you said instead of work-life balance, it's life-work balance. And you just did a nice little flip of the script, literally. Yeah. And that already changes the game. So as you are prioritizing, you're putting yourself first, you're practicing emotional intelligence by strengthening the self-awareness. What do I need to be my best self so that I can then have more energy for my family, for my community, all the things. So I just wanted to highlight that. And you did mention one thing about, speaking up at work. Let's say if they don't have boundaries set in for you to practice your boundaries, this question speaks to that here. So if this is your question and you're here live with us, we would love to know that you're here. Do you have any tips on how to set boundaries when the organizational culture you are in does not respect work-life or life-work balance?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to say this. Many companies are not openly going to say, we want you to set boundaries. Partly because A, that might not be on their priorities list to say. B, they may not have someone working in that function or field. And C, if you don't set them, then you're able to say yes to anything. So here it is, another mindset shift. My last job, they did not allow any boundary setting. I would have a conversation with the CEO at 9 p.m. at night, okay? Until I realized I was not taking control of my own boundaries. And that's where this comes into play. Ask yourself this question. If it gets to a point where if you don't take a call at 9 p.m., if you don't respond to an email on a Saturday, and they threaten to, threaten your compensation, a promotion, your job title, or like your role at the company, you need to leave. That's the first thing I tell anyone. That is not a job that is healthy for you. Because the thing is, you're here because you're prioritized, like balance is a value for you. And if your value is not being met at that job is not going to be a long-term opportunity for you. Remember, your life and your health is long-term. The job is not long-term. So that's the first thing you have to ask yourself. If I do set this boundary, am I going to be punished? Now, can you try to set this boundary? Are you being punished? Have you been told you're not responding to calls at 9 p.m. at night? You need to start rethinking about your exit out of that company, because if it's so important for you that's your time to go. There's a point where you can do so much. Now, the other thing here is too, is if you haven't tried, play with this, okay? So a couple of things you can do is there's like the internal and then there's the external part of that. The internal is the stuff that we feel. It's our mindset shift. It's that feeling of guilt, frustration. I know this one so well. If I don't respond, my CEO is not going to know my talent. or like, I'm not going to get an opportunity to get promoted. So I had to shift that to go, no, I'm not texting her back at 9 p.m. ever again. But I could text her back, but I'm not having a conversation. But what I do say is like, how do you respond to that message or that call? So what I have found a very nice way of doing that is I am currently busy with something. However, I would really like to get to this. These are my time blocks available tomorrow to talk. I can also modify anything around from 8 to 5, knowing that CEO becomes top of a priority list. But I could talk anytime from 8 to 5. You have to put it in there. You don't have to say this is my boundary, but you can say this is when I'm available. And that's how you flip things around. So people know, okay, well, like after 5, she's just not available. So that's one way of doing it. The other thing too is you have to, when you prioritize your list, if you're finding, so I was coaching a client once, and her biggest struggle was, Priya, I want to go to the gym Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and I want to take these classes. And I circled it and I put it on my calendar. But guess what? The obvious, she wasn't making those classes because she was doing work. She was completing reports. She had waking up at 5 a.m. to do something she hadn't done during the day. And I said, so you've prioritized working out, but actually it's not your priority. You say it's your priority, but it's not your priority. If something is a priority to you, you're going to do it and you're going to find a way around it. This is what I say. So you have to tell yourself that my values and my priorities are important. So that's the other thing you want to do. Now, there's a couple things you can do externally with the people you talk to. Think about the person, like the people you report to or the teams that you're in. You can have a one-on-one conversation with your boss and say, I've been rethinking some of my priorities, some of the projects I'm working on. I'd love to be very clear and intentional about the timeframes that I'm available for meetings. Can we talk through what that looks like? The other thing too is ask your boss what their boundaries are. You don't realize it, but they might have boundaries. They might not be communicating. So when you both state your boundaries or state when you're available and when you can take on a project, you actually develop a deeper respect for one another. And now you can work together throughout the boundaries. So if you haven't actually played with it, you're nervous, you're scared, bring up the conversation about, hey, I'm actually going to choose for my own self, like I'm choosing to turn my Slack off at 5 or 5:30. Like, is this going to be an issue? If not, can we see how I can respond to messages at like 9 a.m. in the morning? Or I'll make sure that this is what I commit to doing so that my phone isn't, triggering me all night long. And be very clear to set that. Right now, companies are very much aware that the Great Resignation is coming from burnout. Okay, they know this is happening. A lot of companies are worried about it. Actually, 95% of HR professionals say overturning staff is due to burnout. They're like completely staying it. This is burnout. So you have a chance to say this as a thing. The other piece of it is having those time blocks on your calendars that say do not book. If someone books it, you have to respect yourself. So you have to let them know, hey, I cannot do this. So start practicing saying no. As you build it over time, they're going to know who and when to go to for what, because they know that, Priya's actually going to say no to me if I do this. So it's actually not worth me trying it. See also if you have conversations with people that work in positions that they can do some sort of pool. I know I was in a company where someone suggested, hey, why don't we do like a company-wide no meeting day? So if you have a chance where you can say something like, that's an option to actually influence your peers to do this. And when you make suggestions, add value to everything you're suggesting. We want a company-wide meeting day. This is why we want a company-wide, a low Zoom meeting day. This is why. Here's the studies and the facts. And here I know is what's going to increase productivity if we do X, Y, Z. So be very clear and intentional about why you're suggesting these. And the last thing too is take 5 minutes before or after every meeting to just shut your eyes and listen to what's around you. It changes everything because then you're now like fully in this present moment. I'll definitely say that. Even if you feel like your company is just not giving you that opportunity or not respecting it, and you keep speaking up and you keep speaking up, you have to take care of your mental health. So you have to take those 5 minutes. And sometimes what I've heard people say is, I've scheduled this meeting for an hour, but I always close it 5 minutes early so I can have a transition time. That transition time for many people is they're just shutting their eyes and just listening to what's happening. They're leaving Zoom.
Thank
Was
you.
that help? That was helpful. I put another question in the chat.
Yes, no, this is so helpful. And I really appreciate you highlighting that our mental health comes first, and to expect that first within us and then demonstrate that, show that. You spoke a little bit about empathy as well, and having that deepened respect that comes when you know someone else's, let's say the CEO's boundaries, and you can, form an alliance and start to respect each other's boundaries that way, so you don't feel like you're always pushing people away. Let's transition into what's currently happening. I also love that you mentioned bringing up data to show, like data shows, like we're living in the world of, numbers and data, and everyone's worrying about that. Bring that up to support your mental health.
Yeah. And I'll say this one thing too, like with that, this is a question, this is something I love to do when you're talking to your boss. If you feel like these are my priorities list, so I can't take anything on, and that's not being well received, is to flip it. Get people to make that decision for you so that it's their idea. This is what I say. So I'll do, okay, thank you for offering me this project. I know, it's leading towards my career goals. I love that. But however, here are my list of current projects and the time it's going to take and how I've prioritized them. Can you let me know how you want me to organize my schedule to get that project done? Let them see that the amount of time it's going to take is actually not possible. They're going to get to a point where they'll be like, oh, this is going to take more than 40 hours. And that's where you're like, oh, okay, well, so then how can we bleed 10 of these hours into next week? And that's where you have to own your agency, speak up, but ask your boss that question. Like, where can I prioritize this? Give them that chance to manage or lead you in that. And they might set a boundary without you realizing they set a boundary for you.
That's genius. So I hope you all are taking notes. I know that Mick had to jump, but he said he's going to be rewatching and taking notes. So yes, take notes, rewatch, share this with people, because this is such an important topic. And as Priya mentioned, HR folks are showing the data that lots of people are leaving because of burnout. So let's take this seriously. And actually, speaking of what's happening presently, lots of companies and startups are talking about transitioning into either a hybrid or back to the office working model. So this next question kind of rings to that. How can we adapt to working at the office after a long period of working from home?
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. So that is the hard thing. Okay. This is something that I've had to play with too. The first thing you want to ask yourself is, what worked well working from home that I can bring into and keep consistent into in the office? Ask yourself that. You do some self-reflection in this. Some of that could be, an example is like, I was actually taking lunch. I don't want to stop taking lunch. So I have to figure out how to do that into my actual work schedule. I was starting work at 7 a.m. and getting all my emails done for 2 hours, which actually made me more productive to close out at 2 or 3. Well, can you write it all down? Just jot everything that was working. And now see, what is the stuff that I'll need to communicate to people I work with? You're going to go back into the office, and chances are you're going to have an opportunity to talk to somebody and may or may not have the question that's like, well, how are you dealing with the transition? A lot of companies are worried, and HR is very, very, very focused on what does returning to work look like? And what does that transition look like? If that question does not come up, take it upon yourself to pose that question or to mention it, I'm happy to be in the office if you are, or if you're not, just talk about that. Great to be here. There are some things I learned about my work environment and my productivity working from home. And I want to know where we can have a discussion on some of the areas that I can bring that into here, whether that's being clear about my lunch breaks, or changing the time of our check-in so that I don't have to deal with traffic driving home, coming in earlier, because I found that from 7 to 9, I'm getting 30% of my work done faster than I used to in the past. And so know what was working, bring it into the job. And you really want to actually change your priorities list a little bit differently. There's some things you can do too, is you can start asking or speaking up in meetings, can this be done? Does this have to be a meeting, or can this be done maybe on a Zoom call? Ask your company, what are you doing with the hybrid work environment. What is the company's plans, goals, and missions around this? Bring it up to your boss, because you're not going to be the only one who's bringing this up. If you have peers that can also bring that up to their bosses, bring this up, because if companies are hearing it, I'm hearing a lot of companies thinking about what a hybrid work environment could look like. So ask that question. For me, it's like, I don't have a kid, but I could imagine that transition for you going back into work and then you being at home is going to be a hard emotional turmoil on your whole family. So bring that up in those meetings. Like, is there a way that I can work from home one day a week? But back everything you do up with facts. This is what I say. If you want something to get done, you can get it done if you back it up with facts. So tell them, this is what I plan to do on Fridays if I work from home. This is how much work I can get done. And this is how I plan to report to you if you need to know that I'm available. Like, this is the important stuff. So can we try this out for 2 weeks to see if I can get this done? And if it does work, like, can we keep that as a permanent thing? And these are the days, and like, this is what I'm looking forward to doing in the office. These are the days I'm available for all meetings and I can jump in on all in-person meetings. Let me know how we can work together. That's huge. It's how you're going to communicate this when you get back into the office, honestly. And then whatever you can do internally is think through what worked for you here and how can you bring that into your input. Don't just try to go, okay, well, now that work from home is done, I go back to the way it was before. No, you figured out that you found something that worked. So advocate for yourself to get that going. Find solutions. And another thing some companies are doing is people are putting together like group wellness opportunities. So if you have peers in the group, if you have employee resource groups and you're part of them and you want to join them, and by doing it, you can hire people in, hire like contractors in or teachers in, or even, I could do something mindfulness, but if you hire someone come in and like have them do activities and then show you, like, I know one company is really intentional about what kind of return to work looks like and what kind of offerings they're going to bring their employees so that their employees feel that they can manage their stress and anxiety throughout the day. So even start some of those groups could also be very helpful for you.
Absolutely. And we were just talking about employee resource groups on the previous conversation that I moderated for, and how that can even be an extra burden, especially with, let's say marginalized groups that at this point, need employee resource groups, but they already have a full-time role. And now they have another basically full-time role to either be leading this ERG or, trying to support it in some way. I would just love to hear your advice on how to set boundaries when you are either creating an ERG, employee resource group, or when you are a part of it, so that it's not all of a sudden you have two jobs that you have to do. You have to educate people on, what's going on in this marginalized group and how to advocate. I'm finding that's happening right now.
Yeah. This is the thing, right? We go through this emotional exhaustion too. And it could be, what is it? What is that when it's like that care fatigue where you care so much and you want to do this and actually you love doing the ERG more than you do loving your work. Listen, there's nothing that says you can't work more than 40 hours a week if that's a priority to you. You have to prioritize what matters to you there. If you are joining an ERG, really pay it, like it's compassion fatigue. Yes, Fana. Think about making sure the people that you work with or report to know you're part of this. Like, it's very important that you say that you're part of this, because it could come up with competing priorities. It could come up with competing jobs. And now the ERG gets put to the back burner. So you have to know that they have to know that this is part of what you're doing and you want to do. Making sure that you're not the only person in this group doing all the work. So it's very important that you're delegating tasks. If you are on the lead of an ERG, if you are like taking a specific role, even popping in or dropping in is really important. The one thing I also noticed too is you could do, if there's ways where you're working hybrid work environments, maybe the ERG could have their meetings sometime in the office and sometimes on Zoom. If that's the case, what I've seen people do is say, like, if we do it on Zoom, can we not have our camera on? Knowing that, like, you're creating a space of boundaries in the ERG. So like, if people aren't feeling in their actual workplace that they can set boundaries, in our ERG group, can one of your guiding principles be that we are paying attention to each other's boundaries and mental health here in this group? Because that's something that particularly with ERGs, like that is huge for a lot of individuals, especially for women of color who might be working competing jobs, priorities, and have to take care of family. And there's so much going on. So make that as part of your mission for that group. It's really important to respect each other's boundaries. And if this is something that matters to you so much, put that on your priority list too, so that you are paying attention to it. But tell yourself, if it gets to XYZ, this is where I say no. That's where you have to decide what that is. The other thing I've done is I've actually brought my work in the ERG I was part of, and the committee I was part of. I used to actually, in my check-in with my managers, I would actually put that down as an accomplishment. Like this week, and an additional bonus accomplishment, I've completed all this amazing work. I've completed all my amazing tasks. This is what I'm still working on. These are some questions I have. And this is a cool extra added thing for you to know. In the employee resource group, we discussed this, or we committed to this, or I did XYZ on top of doing all this other stuff, so that they continuously know you're part of this. Don't let them forget, because that's where you easily draw that line of like being asked for more, trying to say no, feeling guilty, feeling like you have to quit something that you care about. But before you decide to quit it, find a way to build it into your schedule and make it very clear that you're doing it.
Yes, I love that. You're dropping so much knowledge. We have a little over 15 minutes left, so I'm just going to hop to this next question that is continuing to speak about, the transition from working at home to working remote. Again, if this is your question and you're here with us, let us know. At the start of the pandemic, my company was very proactive about opening discussions on mental health and respecting our personal time after we shifted to remote work. Now that attitude is fading and the quarantine perks are being eliminated. The company is fine with us staying remote, but how can we help management understand that respect for personal, professional boundaries are best practices and not just a perk of the pandemic?
Yeah, this stuff needs to be brought to the table. So a couple things. Setting your own boundaries is one way to start getting that company culture to be known, and like talking to peers that you feel comfortable about it, and your boss, of course. It's really, really important to put the facts together as well. So one thing you can do if you have relations with people in HR or someone who might do some organizational change in the work, can you survey the staff too? That's one thing as well, is to suggest a survey, like a staff survey of returning to work, or of like things opening up again, to kind of just check for it. It's really important that you can get that information. Some of the questions you might ask are, like, where are you currently? How has the pandemic affected you? How are you feeling? Like, have you experienced burnout? What kind of is your stress level? See if the company's okay with it. Not all are going to be, but some might be. The other thing too is your employee resource groups are another great way to kind of pop in and suggest some group wellness opportunities or activities. I had said earlier, it's can you suggest maybe a Zoom off day, because you're still working from home? So can we still have a Zoom off day? Talking to your boss about, what really helped me in the pandemic was when the company offered XYZ. Is there a way that we can continue to have this here? And then I can't stress enough how important it is that you respect your own boundaries and that you respect your own priorities. Now, when I say priorities, here's a good tip or some questions you can ask yourself when it comes to setting priorities, because sometimes people have a hard time. And I know that there was a question on this, like, how do you organize yourself? How do you organize your task when there is so many? And it may not just be 3 things a week, which is very common and why you might be here today. So what I really, really suggest is jot everything down on a paper that you have to do. Everything down on a paper. Let it be overwhelming, let it flow, let it be long, just jot it. But don't, in the process of jotting it, try to find a solution or due date. Just jot it down. That's what I say. Now ask yourself these questions for each one of these priorities. What needs to be done immediately? Circle them. Immediately is like the due date is approaching, or that this is going to take me 2 weeks to even get to the meat of this. I have to start doing this, or I have to report to my boss on this. What are the consequences if the task is not done? That's huge. If the consequences are low or if they're high, that's a big one. When should you start working on the task? So just something like, did you get an email saying I need this in 2 hours? Okay, that needs to move up to your priority list, because the board is reading this information and it's a huge value, like a huge decision making. There's a difference now. If I need this in 2 hours, okay, great. what would happen if I gave it to you in 4 hours because I have a competing meeting? These are questions you can ask in return. What resources and inputs do I need to complete this task? So do I have everything I need? And is there someone that could help me complete this task that I could delegate to? Sometimes we have staff or teams and we have a hard time letting go. Part of setting boundaries is letting go. What has not been done that should have been done? So like, these are the tasks that like live on our burnout mind. Those emails, I'm telling you, it's so huge. If you can actually tell yourself, I'm going to stop thinking about this email and I'm just going to send it now. I'm just doing it now. Like, that is huge. It takes away 2 hours of thinking about it. Part of burnout is thinking of the process. That is huge. So ask yourself those questions and then identify, what are the ones that are coming up to the top? Make your list and break it out into A, B, or C. A being like high priority, B being medium priority, and C being low priority. Estimate the time it's going to take with each one of these priority tasks. And then that's where you start putting it on your calendar. Now you can have, like, if you can't have private blocks on your calendar, it's okay to have it written down somewhere. And it's okay just to have like working, if it's okay at your company, right? Like, I know everything might be different. It's like a working session. And in that working session, you might have notes of what you're trying to do on that. It's also good sometimes if your boss is looking at your calendar to have working sessions. I found it helpful for my boss to see like, oh my gosh, I don't have to tell her everything on my plate. She's actually looking at my calendar, potentially reading the notes in my calendar invite and realizing everything on my plate. And so I heard from my boss once that she did that. And she's like, I decided to give this to someone else because I knew, like, I saw everything that you still had to get done. And so that was great. And then while you're looking at your priorities and your checklist, look at those priorities. And if a new task or project comes in, see where you can fit it in. If it's going down to your lower priority, you have to say no. And if you say no and you're having a hard time just saying no, you can use like if and statements. So like, okay, like you've suggested this project, like if I were to give it to you at 9 p.m., no, not 9 p.m., 5 p.m. on Friday instead of Thursday, like would that change anything? Or you can also say like, thank you for assigning this project. This is what's currently on my plate, but I can get this done, or I can get this done Thursday at 9 a.m. If not, then like where can we push the due date just a little bit, because these are the other tasks on my plate, unless you suggest these other things are not as priority as this. But know that like at 5:30, I will not be doing this. So we're going to have to talk about this again at 9 a.m. in the morning. The boundaries things is hard, but the one thing I've learned, it builds respect. It does. I tell you this much, it builds respect for somebody, for you. And if you're feeling you're not receiving that respect, and it's so important for you to do so because you really need that boundary, like, ask yourself if this is the right place for me to be in. It, like, of course, money is probably a priority. We get that. And so like, what does that transition look like for me? Or like, who can I have a conversation with at my company?
Beautifully said, beautifully said. So we have about 10 minutes left, and I just wrote in the chat box if anyone wants to hop off mute. Janice, I see that your hand is raised. Please unmute yourself and voice your question or your reflection.
I think I saw a question from her in the chat too.
And we can't hear you, just so you know, if you're speaking. We aren't able to hear you, Janice. Still can't hear you. Sorry about that. Maybe if you have headphones in, and try to unplug, replug, or
Okay.
There you
There
are.
you go.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, the last comment that you just mentioned, I sent something in the chat, and I'm not sure what fields you've worked in, but when you mentioned it earlier in the session, try flipping it and asking your employer or your boss how you should prioritize to get certain tasks done. And then you just mentioned it, the last thing you said, that is always going to, I think, depend upon culture of the organization that you're in, as well as those people who are in the positions of authority. From my experience, and I will say even from myself, if I were asked that from an employee, I would tell them, you have your task at hand. In our ever-changing environment, which I've worked in government a good deal of my career, And that's why professionals are hired. So for me, if I had ever said something like that to my boss, which was a member of Congress or a mayor or a council member, I would have been fired. And so the very last thing that you said, I think really reflects more of what people have to make decisions on. Is this the right environment for you? Because in extremely fast-paced environments, I imagine people who work on Wall Street have similar situations. But for me, when I was the communications director for a mayor or the legislative director for a member of Congress, and as you see what's going on now, legislation has to get out, things change, I mean, national security happens, that changes priorities. You have to get it done. And it's unfortunate that, I have worked round the clock, but it does not work in some environments to say to your employer, I have this, and this to do. What do you want me to do first? That's not going to work. So I think for individuals, and I don't know where they are in their career, I've been in mine 30 years, it's at a point where you have to decide, is this where I need to be? And I know I've done that for myself, because sometimes it's just not the environment for you if you have to leave at 5, if you need to pick up children, if you have to do that, those types of things. But I just want to say that never would I ever have been able to say that to my employer. And even if one of my 1,300 employees, when I worked for a federal agency or in the White House, said that to me, I'd have a problem with it. Thank you.
Thank you. This brings up a lot. So I'll tell you this. The last job I left at the college was actually government-based. So I went through this exact process and I saw the people above me working like that. And that's where I asked myself this question: do I want that in my life or not? Because I said, what was the value in my priorities of what mattered to me? And it wasn't that, right? And so I hear you in saying that to employers. Now, that was just a suggestion for some people, because for some people it works that way. For some people too, right? I think it's important to note that we as managers and leaders, it's important for us to also pay attention to our employees' boundaries, because what ends up happening is turnover is so high. And right now we're seeing employers are losing a lot of employees. And so there are different ways of framing that if you're not comfortable. Other ways of even saying is just making sure to note and state for some people in some industries, like, this is the work I'm working on. And like I had said earlier, if you don't feel comfortable doing that in your company and you know that they're not going to receive it well, that's when you have to tell yourself, do I want to be here or not? That is huge and huge and huge, because if you're finding that your workplace values, if balance and life work balance is important for you in a workplace value, you're not in a place that you see the people around you doing it, and you're not in a place that you feel people will respect it, it's not the place for you. I'll say that again, it's not the place for you. You can do the work you want to do potentially elsewhere in a different setting, environment, or maybe different way of doing it, but that's not the place to be for you. Shannon, I see you have a hand up. Sorry, I took your job, but.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you, Janice, for hopping off mute. I know that you're not alone in that situation, and I really appreciate the reflection there, Priya, so thank you. Shannon, go ahead and hop off mute.
Hi, Priya, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I just had a quick question. It might be a little off topic, but I currently work a 40-hour a week at a commuting job, and I am also trying to get a small business started at the same time. But I'm kind of exhausted from my work week, from having to do like household, like cleaning, cooking, trying to take time to like kind of unwind. Do you have like any suggestions for like just beginning that process and encouraging myself to like work on that small business? Because a lot of times I feel like it gets shoved to the side.
You are speaking my language a year ago when I launched my company. Oh my gosh, I remember this. Okay, not gonna lie, it's gonna take hard work. But what ends up happening is your business, you will be working more than 40 hours a week. We're not gonna I can't hold back, right? Like if that's where your current job is, and then there's goals. This is what I would say: set goals for your business now, so you know what you need to get to and what you're gonna measure up against. That's so important, because what ends up happening if you don't have goals, that Friday evening when you wanted to work on something and you're exhausted, you put it aside. So start having something you can track towards. The other suggestion I have is don't work on your business every single day if you're working on it after work or before work, because it's a quick way to get burnt out. It's the same way as if you're applying to work. If you're working in a current job and you're applying to a job, don't do it every single night or day, because you can get burnt out. And then what ends up happening is you're like, okay, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm going to work from 5 to 6 and do my business or work, apply for something. What ends up happening if that one Wednesday you did not do it? That next day, guilt sets in and we feel bad and we apologize to ourselves and we are like, oh my gosh, like I'm falling behind. And then all the negative feelings comes out. And that is the surest way of you to put yourself down. And then that Thursday, you'll probably not do it again and you'll feel overwhelmed. So schedule out. What I did, truthfully, is I had one weeknight scheduled and then Sunday evening scheduled. I put it on my calendar and then I found somebody to hold me accountable. That's the biggest thing. I told either your friend or like my husband or like anyone you talk to, don't call me Sundays from 3 to 6. Don't bother me in the room. I'll make sure everything that I need to get done for you is done, but I'm not available for you from 3 to 6 on Sundays. And I need you, when I tell you I'm available to watch that Netflix show with you, I need you to tell me no. Like I need you to say no to me. And that's the only way I got this done. Like I had to do that. And then the other thing when you're starting your business, I'm hoping it has to do with your passion. I'm like assuming it has to do with some passion. Okay, this is what I suggest. Do something you love before you work on your business. That puts you in a space of like happiness. I love to dance. So I would do 5 minutes of listening to my favorite song and just dance. And then I sat at my computer and I was completely myself. And that's where I poured everything about myself out into my plan. That's one thing I always, even before a job interview, do something you love that puts you in that space of like your true self.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Shannon, and good luck. Keep us posted on how that flows. And I find more and more, I'm sure you found some data on this, that more and more people are trying to do their own thing because they're just, figuring out, if I'm going to give all my time, energy, talent to something, I want to do it for, I want to take the leap of faith and start that thing that's been pending for years and try to ride this wave of uncertainty, change. Let me bring my best self to the table and join talks like this and start to network with people who are in the same kind of mindset, or at least who can encourage that change to happen. Accountability is key, and all things that you've said today. I mean, accountability is key. That calendar keeps us accountable, but then having a human being tell us yes or no because they know our goals, I find that to be very helpful as well. So thank you, Shannon and Janice, for hopping off mute. We've got 2 minutes left. So Priya, can you leave us with some food for thought? Leave us with some food for thought, what we should start doing right now in this moment when we hang up this conversation, and then remind us how we can connect with you when we finish this chat.
Yeah. This is like the biggest takeaway. And for any situation, whatever industry you're in, like the number one thing to do is like, just do something that makes you happy and put that first. If you're working 12-hour days, can you wake up 30 minutes, 20 minutes earlier and do that one thing that you used to do in the past that you just want to do so bad because you'll be more productive throughout the day? Put self-care as a priority. It's not selfish. Reframe your mind to start saying no if you can. And then be very intentional about if this is where you want to be because it's eating at your mental health. That's so important. The other piece, it kind of slipped my mind, but know that boundary setting is something a lot of people are working through. So even if the only thing you have to do is shut off for 5 minutes and think through this in your mind and process your emotions before you react and respond. They say using power breathing techniques, which is just counting your breaths in and out, is the surest way for you to beat the fight or flight response. Immediately, you start to respond in a very different way. So practice it in that way, and you'll realize what ends up happening is when you have tough meetings, that's where burnout also happens. If you can actually process your thoughts before a meeting and you can see that meeting goes in a different way than you had assumed, you'll walk away feeling maybe a little bit better, and that's where you can sleep. The other thing too is if you are putting a lot of time into your work and that is important to you because that's where you're at in your stage right now, because that's okay. Just be okay with what you do have to sacrifice. Don't feel guilty. Be okay knowing that there is a sacrifice, what that is, and communicate to the people that you might have to sacrifice with. This is where I'm at now, but I promise this is where I want to be. or this is what I'm shooting for. Just be clear and honest. Everything about vulnerability and communication. And then for me, I do offer, and this will go in an email, like a free 15-minute boundary setting coaching. After every time I talk, I'll do like a 15-minute coaching session. So if you want that, it's free for being here. You can sign up. I'll make sure that Power to Fly has my information, the link to sign up. Add me on LinkedIn. I'm doing more of these workshops. And again, like that's the one thing you can do to come to me is like schedule 15 minutes and we can talk about what's going on in your life and get your plan going. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'm definitely going to connect with you, and I encourage our live listeners to connect and, take care of yourself, put yourself first, practice empathy, self-awareness. All these things are really going to help us make some real change. I really appreciate everyone. And I hope to see you on the next Chat and Learn. See you later.
Thank you all.